Welcome to this episode of the State of Hoops podcast. This is your co-host Todd Schlekeway, along with my fellow co-host Nate Malchow. Chow, how you doing?
I'm doing well, Schleck. How are you?
Good. I know you're busy. We were just talking before the podcast that you're getting ready to head to an event tonight. That's the typical day in the life of an AD, nights and weekends, right?
Yeah, it's a busy time, but it's a fun time. Just have a little break in the action here and then on to another school to watch some basketball.
Well, that is a good transition to talk about this episode for our listeners and viewers. We have talked for some time. Hey, we need to do an episode on Nate and I's experiences coaching youth basketball. And we've actually had some viewers and listeners request an episode focused on that topic. So we're going to do that today. And it's also fitting because I just returned this past weekend, Nate. I was in Omaha with my sixth grader and my fourth grader. My two younger boys played in the same Omaha youth basketball tournament. So I got my fill of youth basketball over the weekend. And so we're going to have an episode kind of sharing some stories and talking about our experiences on the youth basketball circuit.
Well, Schleck, I think we can probably start out maybe with our experience growing up on the youth basketball circuit. I mean, things have certainly changed since the 80s and late 80s, early 90s when we were playing probably between our third or fourth grade year and our eighth grade years. And back then, growing up in Aberdeen and playing on a Y team, the three big tournaments that we went to each year were the Aberdeen Interstate Tournament, the Watertown Interstate Tournament, and then the Pier Tournament. And those were 3 weekends that you look forward to, maybe play Friday, play Saturday, you get a 2 or 3 game guarantee and just got to play with your buddies and get on that circuit. Things certainly have changed though with the evolution of club basketball with kids playing about every weekend, being multiple times a week. Back then our priority was, and still is to a degree, but our priority was our school basketball and playing with your school teams or maybe your Y teams. If you're in elementary school, your school teams, if you got into middle school and junior high. But yeah, 3 tournaments, and those were the ones you circled. And a lot of times, Schleck, those weren't played until March and April. So it was actually after the state tournaments were going on as well.
Yeah, and of course we played against each other. I was on a team from Mobridge called the Bridgers. So after the varsity season ended, my dad was the high school basketball coach at Mobridge. My dad coached my team, whatever grade we were. He was our coach, and we ran into a team called the Aberdeen Sixers that was our nemesis in the youth circuit. And, fast forward to today, not only you, Nate, but many of those teammates of yours on the Aberdeen team are friends of mine as well. So cherish those memories. But yeah, you're right. I mean, we coached our boys, and we're going to get into that. We really met on the hardwood at that age playing against each other.
Yeah, that was quite a rivalry between the Aberdeen teams and Mobridge. And I mean, I think of the friends that I've made who are the same age as us,
Yeah.
class of 1996, guys from Watertown with the young Todd Neuendorf coaching their traveling team. A lot of battles with teams from North Dakota, 48 specifically. Would come down and play in these tournaments against Aberdeen and Mobridge, and a name from those teams would be guy named Russ Archambault, who ended up being an All-American at Huron, played for the University of Minnesota. He was on those teams, but, just we'd run in occasionally to Mitchell or a Pierre or some of those teams as well. So just a lot of great memories.
Yeah, you brought up a name there, Nate. Russ Archambault. Of course, growing up in Mobridge, the Standing Rock Reservation and Fort Yates, where he grew up, I played against him frequently in grade school and early junior high. And he was probably the best player I had ever played against at that point in time. It was amazing, even back then, to see him elevate on his jump shot. And of course, he later went on to play for the Gophers on that Final Four team in '97. So great, great to reminisce about that name specifically, that you brought up.
Yeah. Yeah, just those are the fun ones that you remember, and again, those relationships forged, and it's funny that's been 35, close to 40 years, and you run into these guys, and you're still talking about those days, and and just all the fun times that you had.
So let's fast forward now, Nate, to our time spent coaching our boys who were the same age. We got together when our boys were in third grade, coached them through eighth grade, 6 years. I counted, I believe we coached in over 240 youth games together, if you can believe it. Talk about another thing that's changed from our era. Uh, Great memories. We had a simple motto. We were preparing him for high school basketball and trying to teach him life lessons. And I couldn't have asked for a better sidekick. I'm going to let you tell it, but you often share the story about where that ranked in your coaching hierarchy.
One of the best coaching jobs in my life, Schleck, and I was the assistant coach with you. We had a blast coaching our kids and a great group of other kids and families. We had multiple families that went through the teams that we coached, and just had a great relationship with all of them, and great people, and just a lot of fun to see these kids grow, and not only in basketball but grow as young people. And a coach plays just a big part of that. And my joke was, I just had to I didn't have to write any of the practice plans. I didn't have to put out any of the email communications. Schleck, you took care of that. I was just there to make sure that they weren't shedding tears on the bench or arguing with referees or showing bad sportsmanship. So I think we had that pretty pretty well distributed there, and had a lot of fun doing it.
Yeah, and I think one of the reasons we meshed so well together, not only because of our friendship, but we wanted to control the experience, Nate. And by that, I mean much more than just on the floor. When you coach, you can control the experience of the kids and families. And I think that's the thing that I'll take away the most from those years is I think we were able to do that successfully.
Yeah. And you want it to be a positive experience. I mean, kids are going to be of all different abilities. Kids are going to be hitting those abilities at different times. I mean, that's just a part of growing up, but you try to create a positive experience, and teach them about the game and teach them life lessons, and you hope that that's a foundation to get them through those young years, those middle school years, those teenage years. Those aren't easy for a lot of kids, and you just hope that they have a good experience. And like us, we were so fortunate to have positive experiences with that growing up, and we knew the impact that that had on our lives, and maybe how that set the stage for everything. So you hope that the ones that you coached at that age, especially elementary and middle school, that they have great memories of that as they get older.
Chalk Talk.
For our Chalk Talk segment this episode, Nate, we're going to talk about kind of the foundational teaching points on the floor that we value when we were coaching. Again, those formative years of third through eighth grade. Let's get into that a little bit on some of the areas of the game we emphasize, both in practice and on during games, during live reps in games. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I think at a younger age, you got to try to put the fun in the fundamentals. Kids need to have a good fundamental base, and working on skills, and whether it's individual skills or small group skills. At the end of the day, it's got to be fun. They got to want to come to practice, and be around their friends, and just be able to have a positive experience with it. And anytime you're working with kids who are ages 8 to 13, I mean, they're going to be goofy sometimes. And have some laughs and do some of those things, but circling back and just making sure that they understand that we're going to have some fun, but we got some work to get done here too. And that's a part of developing a work ethic at a young age. But at the same time, you got to put the work in, and it's got to be fun, and doing some fun drills to incorporate along with what you want to get done fundamentally.
Yeah, and I always enjoyed the opportunity to kind of write the practice plans. We always tried to structure skill development, so shooting, dribbling, passing as a part of our youth basketball practices. And then we'd segue into defense, specifically man to man defensive principles, a lot of shell drill concepts, 4-on-4 shell drill. And you know me, Nate, I was a big stickler for fundamentals of a closeout defensively. I watch games at all levels, and there's too many kids flying around, leaving their feet defensively. And I got that really during my 2 years at Northern playing for Bob Olson. We did a closeout drill every day in practice. And That's not always glamorous, but I tell you what, in the context of a half court defense, closing out, sprint, halfway, chop, get your hands up. That makes a difference in a team defense, individual defense, and of course, the higher level you go now that our boys are freshmen, you're gonna have to be sound defensively. So I think that was one of my areas that I really focused on during these years was man-to-man defense and closeouts.
That came in Schleck, just so our listeners know, we weren't doing that stuff when they were in 3rd grade. We we weren't doing that stuff maybe in 4th grade, but, as they got to probably the end of it, because we coached our kids 3rd through 8th grade, probably we started getting a little bit more of that, just the basics in 6th
Yep.
grade, but by the time they became 7th and 8th graders, we're able to do some more things with them and in terms of a shell drill and proper technique on the defensive end, and they grow into some of those things. I'll tell anybody here, you try doing that with 3rd graders, good luck keeping their attention to do something like that. But I think as the kids became more interested and you're able to progress in skill and do some things, then you can hop into that kind of in their middle school years.
Yeah, good point. We coached together so long that kinda broke down these drills incrementally, and as they got a little older, we introduced more of those concepts that I was talking about there earlier. And then on offense, Nate, you and I were both big on teaching spacing, like a lot of coaches are and do. 4 out, 1 in. Talk a little bit about the kind of the fundamentals of having a post player.
Well, I think a lot of that starts with we want our players to learn fundamentals in a positionless environment, I guess. I mean, because I think that all kids need to learn how to be good with the ball, right? I mean, they need to learn how to, just shooting technique, working on your shot, passing, all those things. Some of those things are positionless, but I do think that um, we also have to teach our kids some different positions there too, whether it's the post or guard. These days, I see a lot of kids with a lot of size who sometimes are just maybe a little bit behind on post play and the importance of that, which is interesting because if you go to the higher levels of play, so many things are taken out of post ups, whether it's ISOs with guards or forwards or centers and posting up. But I think that's a part of the game that's important for everybody to be doing, whether it's your bigs or your guards, just teaching that fundamental play on the block, because at some point, when they progress and they get older, they're going to have to learn to score in that position as well.
Yeah, well said. And I always like having uh, a post player in the lane most of the time because there'd be another offensive rebounder, and you score a lot of points at that level with full boards. So that was always something we emphasized. I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about you talked about putting the fun in practices, Nate. And these youth seasons are very long. Kids are playing pretty 50-game seasons, and we did that ourselves with our group, Nate, numerous years, which is why we coached together for over 240 games at youth basketball. You had a very unique gift and talent because of your high school coaching experience of kind of knowing the pulse of the team, knowing when we needed a quote unquote, in your words, a state tournament practice that would always end. Again, this goes back to your Aberdeen roots, the Pepsi Hot Shot contest. Talk a little bit about the state tournament practice, culminating with the Pepsi Hot Shot.
Well, I think a lot of parents might chuckle at this who have kids who are youth basketball players now. Sometimes when you come in at 7, 8 o'clock, that's the time that you're getting gym time on a given night, and kids are already maybe they had their middle school practices that day, and you're trying to balance things out. We don't need to bring kids in and have a 2 or 2.5 hour practice. I mean, you're not going to get anything out of that. The kids are tired. The attention span maybe is just a little bit shorter. So a state tournament practice to me goes back to days when I was coaching in high school or coach in Washington, and we get a state tournament practice the day before a game where it was 60 minutes and that's all you had. I would almost agree that when you get into those middle school days and practices where they're playing school ball and they're doing that, you even shorten that more and emphasize things, get to the point and be upfront with the kids. I mean, we have 45 to 60 minutes to get in here and get better at what we do. We know that you're busy with a lot of things, but I need your attention for that time. And then at the end, uh, we try to do something that was fun or something that was fun and competitive. Back at the old Northern camps, they called it the Pepsi Hot Shot Contest. They'd have stopwatch. You had 30 seconds. You had to make a layup, a free throw, a 3.5 court shot. And if you made a half court shot, you got a prize of some kind. Maybe it was a free t-shirt or socks or something like that. We used to do that at Washington. We'd be in this time of the year and it's January and it's early February and teams are grinding and players maybe are tired. You're playing a lot of stretches. So we tried to shorten practice times and have a little fun at the end. And our deal was if people, I mean, we had prizes for Dairy Queen, all of that. If we had a couple kids who would get that Pepsi hot shot in 30 seconds, everybody's getting DQ. And it would just be, our teams would just be thrilled. And then you end practice, 1, 2, 3, go. Let's get back tomorrow and let's get after it again. So small thing, but it got them sometimes to focus in and work hard.
Those were great memories, and that's what we're talking about here, the things we remember from those youth practices. We're gonna transition now to several sponsor ads. Tiefenthaler Real Estate with Hague Realtors. For over 30 years, Pat and Pam Tiefenthaler of Tiefenthaler Real Estate with Hague Realtors have been trusted names in and around the Sioux Falls community. Building relationships that last, they're humbled and honored to serve buyers and sellers with care and expertise. Whether you're a first-time homebuyer or navigating a move because life happens, Pat and Pam will walk beside you, guiding you every step of the way. Call Pat or Pam at Tiefenthaler Homes with Hague Realtors today, your trusted partners in Sioux Falls. Visit tiefteam.hague.com or call 605-321-0550 today.
And I also want to take a moment to thank the team at Insight. They are the folks who helped us with the visual assets to bring this podcast to life. And I can tell you, they don't just make things look good. They dive in, ask the right questions, and come back with great ideas that actually work. Whether it's branding, campaigns, or creative strategy, Insight has a way of helping businesses stand out and connect with people in meaningful ways. If you're looking for a partner to make an impact on your business, check them out at insightmarketingdesign.com.
Give and go.
For today's Give and Go segment, Nate, we're going to go back and forth for a few minutes here on the topic of why culture, body language, character matters in youth basketball and demonstrating that. One thing that I'll tell our viewers and listeners I always appreciated about you is when we saw one of our players struggling with body language or wanting to say something to an official, you did all the subbing when we were together on the bench, and I didn't even talk to him. He went over and talked to you. Talk about why that matters, and it's such a formative age, developing those habits of character and body language on and off the floor.
It's interesting you bring that up, Schleck. I go back to my days when I was growing up and my parents, who raised me and taught me the game and brought me to things. And I'll be the first to tell you, when I was younger, I was not perfect in that way. I mean, I was probably overly competitive. I had a temper. I'd get upset. And I'm talking when I was in 5th, 6th, 7th grade, probably at that time, and maybe a little more emotional if maybe things didn't go my way on the court. So I'd get mad with some things. And I just remember my parents always stressing to me, don't let anybody see you sweat. I mean, basketball is a game where you're going to go out and you're going to play and maybe you make some mistakes and everything, but don't let people see when you get down or when you get frustrated. And it took me a while to do that, but I was lucky to have coaches and parents, coaches that demanded that out of me as a young age, and parents, my own parents, that supported that. And believe me, I mean, I'd get in the car afterwards and it's okay. Hey, fun to watch you play and do that. If I had a bad attitude or bad body language on the court, they're going to jump right into that. It was never, well, you scored 20 points or 30 points and you had 15. It was, doing things the right way. And I was lucky enough to have parents and coaches that supported that as a young age or at a young age. And I think that just kind of stuck with me through my years playing in high school and college and then coaching, at the different levels. And I had great coaches that I was able to start my coaching career with that modeled that as well.
Yeah, and you were excellent at teaching that and using moments that happened in games or practices as teachable moments. One observation I've made through the years when we coach youth basketball is that the parents really take their cues oftentimes and feed off the coaches. And so how many times were we at tournaments, Chow in Omaha, Lincoln, or Des Moines, and we saw that the teams we were playing, we weren't saints, but let's just say the opposing coaches were not exactly modeling behavior that's becoming of what I believe to be a youth coach. And so what that did is create this atmosphere where the parents got involved and maybe it was yelling at the officials or yelling at kids. And so I think one of my observations is really it's if you're coaching youth basketball, just be cognizant that oftentimes the parents of your kids take their cues from you and your demeanor on the sideline.
And I don't care what level of play it is, Schleck, whether it's youth or whether it's getting into high school, college, pros, cues are going to come from the head coach and how they conduct themselves in moments that it can be heated or moments that where the pressure's on, even late in games when you're playing for things and playing for titles. It's so important that you are a good role model for your kids and that you're setting that example. I could go on and talk about certain experiences that I had, but in my world and in my perspective here too is that when we get to the high school level, the purpose of high school athletics is education-based athletics. So we're taking opportunities for kids to grow along with the classroom and providing extracurricular opportunities for them to grow in an educational based environment. So sometimes we have to remember that as we're getting our youth players ready for high school basketball, that is the core of education based athletics and just learning through doing things the right way and setting example.
And one thing I will emphasize too to while we're talking about this, Nate, is now that I have my oldest son as a freshman in high school, involved with the high school program, and I'm not coaching my two younger boys, but I'm at all their games. I've observed there's a bigger picture, there's a bigger path. Not every game at the youth levels, the NBA finals, right? So I already have a different perspective than I did a year ago, Nate. And I'll admit that, just a moment of reflection that it's really about development at that level. Sometimes when you're in it, it means so very much, especially when you're coaching your kids like we do. We were heavily invested, but there's a bigger path ahead. It's been good for me to sit back and not coach this season and follow my oldest son, the high school level, my two younger boys, and it's given me kind of a new vantage point to observe the whole scene.
I'll be honest with you too. As fun as we had, it's time to let your kids go to high school and get coached by different people. And it doesn't matter if it's basketball or different sports. I think one of the keys of life is just learning how to work with multiple personalities. I mean, I had coaches when I was growing up, maybe where I was frustrated, but I just remember my parents telling me, Nate, when you get out in the real world, you're going to have to work with people with different personalities, and you better figure it out how to do that and figure out how to communicate and and work through some things. And again, those were lessons that I was lucky to receive and to maybe learn some independence, to be able to have conversations and do things where my parents were encouraging me to see the big picture, that there's life beyond basketball, but the lessons that you're learning right now are going to help you later on. And when you hit adversity, that's probably one of the biggest parts too when you're coaching youth basketball is there's going to be times that you fail. There's going to be times that you fall down, but that's sports. That's athletics. What are you going to do about it? Okay? Things get tough. You're going to work your way out of it or you're going to walk away from it. And that's life. I can't tell you I've been through challenges outside of basketball in my life, whether it's health challenges, whatever it is. But the lessons that I've learned through this game to handle some of that adversity, I wouldn't trade it for anything.
Very well said, Nate. And that's a good transition. We're gonna go through a few more sponsor ads at this time. Park Bench Tournaments. Looking for the ultimate basketball experience in the Black Hills? Look no further than Park Bench Athletics, your host for premier youth tournaments all winter long. Join Park Bench Apparel for epic events starting in December and going through April with over 100 teams from South Dakota, North Dakota, Wyoming, Montana, Nebraska, and Colorado at each tournament. Check out Mount Rushmore in the Black Hills or hang out at the Waikiki Indoor Water Park with your team when you're not playing. Sign up today at parkbenchapparel.com or find their tournaments on the Turning Machine app and let the games begin.
And if you love South Dakota hoops, discover the legacy at the South Dakota High School Basketball Hall of Fame, a nonprofit dedicated to preserving our state's rich basketball history for generations to come. Visit their incredible exhibits at the Sanford Pentagon in Sioux Falls and explore stories, milestones, and legends online at www.sdbbhof.com. From iconic players and coaches to the unforgettable teams, this is South Dakota basketball. Again, encourage everybody to check out the organization's website and be a part of the tradition.
Charles Schwab. Looking for trusted financial guidance close to home? Visit Charles Schwab's Sioux Falls, South Dakota branch, your local investment firm. Led by Lonnie Struckman and Zach Hansen, financial consultants with over 25 years of combined experience, their team is here to help you reach your financial goals. Whether you're planning, investing, or just have questions, Lonnie, Zach, and their team put clients first every time. Call 605-231-4844 or search Schwab Sioux Falls at schwab.com to book your appointment today. Charles Schwab, own your tomorrow.
Bleacher Preachers.
For the Bleacher Preacher segment, since we're talking about youth basketball this episode, we thought we'd engage our audience and we want to hear from you. Send us an email at stateofhoopspodcast@gmail.com or DM us on X and Instagram. What are some of your experiences coaching or being a parent in the youth basketball scene? And some of the common topics, Nate, that get brought up are zone versus man-to-man defense at that level. We could do a whole episode on that alone, probably. How do you juggle playing time with a roster of kids? Emphasis on winning versus development. Where do you draw the line? But those are just some of the topics we'd like to hear from our audience and engage our audience, viewers and listeners on. But I'll just open it up. I mean, some of your overall thoughts.
Well, I'll start with zone versus man defense. Just as a coach, I can tell you this, that everything that we did, and again, I mean, we're Schleck, what we did isn't perfect and it's not it's not textbook, but you take your experiences and you try to do what's best to get kids ready to play at the high school level. Kids need to learn how to play man-to-man defense. They have to learn how to guard somebody. They have to be able to do things as a team. And I can say that to you, Schleck, just because my background mostly was man-to-man growing up and being in college and then coaching in high school. My last 3 or 4 years, we were exclusively a zone team at the high school level. But I will tell you this, that everything that we did in that zone defense was predicated by man-to-man fundamentals. We were still doing 4-on-4 shell drill every day. We were still doing, we called a Gary Munson 4-corner drill. Any coaches that want to know about that, shoot us an email and be happy to talk about that. But just what that drill was spreading things out and forcing help to take away dribble penetration and all of that. But everything that we did in the zone was predicated by man-to-man defense. And to learn the fundamentals, to play man, to learn how to do it as a team, to learn how to jump to the ball, to get yourself in position to make plays was very, very beneficial. So I think at the youth levels, there are times maybe where you throw in like a zone press or do something, maybe just to try some different things out. But I would encourage anybody who's at the youth level, as a former coach, to make sure that you're playing man defense so those kids learn the fundamental skill of how to do that. Any good zone that you see at the upper levels in high school and college, they're all going to have man-to-man principles to it anyways. So the kids have to learn that at some point.
And it's hard at the youth level too. I'm a big proponent of man-to-man, all the way through 8th grade. It's hard at the youth level, Nate, to run a zone effectively. If, let's say, you're practicing twice a week on average, right? How are you going to effectively run a zone? Jim Boeheim coached for how long at Syracuse? And by the way, his zone was man-to-man principles on the perimeter for the most part. So it's just, kids at a younger age sometimes aren't strong enough to make that skip pass. And so, yeah, you can be successful with the zone, but kids have to learn to move their feet. And eventually they're going to get in a program in high school where they're going to have to guard somebody close out their feet. So I'm personally a big proponent of man-to-man, and it was great hearing your thoughts on it. And we would like to hear what everyone else thinks on that.
Well, and Schleck and Schleck, I'll illustrate that point with what you're saying. Just thinking about some of the teams that I coached at Washington, and we had multiple state championship teams, and all of those teams that we had, I think we had 3 state championship teams, and in the championship games and throughout the course of the season, they played a lot of 23 zone defense. But I will tell you this: in my 6 years coaching with you at the youth level, we didn't play 2-3 one possession. Did not play it. So we might do a little full court 1-3-1, 13, just mixing some things up. But I mean, if you don't believe in the importance of teaching those man-to-man defensive skills, that's how important I thought it was, even when we were playing zone at the high school level, because everything was principled in that foundation of man defense.
And I'm willing to bet if you polled most South Dakota high school girls and boys varsity basketball coaches, they would be echoing sentiments. It's that important. And again, we don't have all the answers, Nate and I. We just wanted to have a little banter on this topic. And please do engage with us. Send us an email. Send us some DMs on social media. And we'd like to hear from you. What are some of your experiences in youth basketball as a coach, as a parent? We want to foster that dialogue and discussion.
Shout out.
As we close out this episode of the State of Hoops podcast, it's time for our show out, shout out segment. Nate, you're on the clock. Who's the show out, shout out for this episode?
My shout out goes to longtime Avon girls basketball coach Brad Poppy. And Coach Poppy picked up his 500th win in the past week. What an amazing accomplishment. And just not only in coaching the Avon girls all these years and having a great run, but think of all the kids, I mean, that a coach impacts when they've been around for that long and having that success. But Brad is one of the good guys in the South Dakota coaching ranks. He's the AD there as well, so I get to see him in that role a little bit. But going back to our history, you know, he was there at Avon when I was coaching at Washington. We'd run into Avon a little bit during the summer, and he had some really, really good teams and some good games with them. And the one thing, and I still joke with him to this day, is that the Avon girls had some great out of bounds plays. And as a basketball coach, you're trying to find that edge. You know, where can I find a side out of bounds player, a baseline out of bounds player, just some kind of special that I can put in that's new. And the Warriors took a few from Brad Poppy there, and he was so generous to share it. And I just remember being at the Augie basketball camp and going through that in X and Owen. But through that, Brad's become a longtime friend. So just happy for him and the community of Avon. 500 wins. Shout out to Coach Poppy. Keep up the great work.
Yeah, I'll echo that, Nate. Congrats to Coach Poppy. That's a great way to close out this episode. Just a reminder to our viewers and listeners to subscribe to the State of Hoops podcast. You can find us on YouTube, Spotify, iHeartMedia, Apple Podcasts, and Amazon Music. We have some great content coming up, great guests coming up, so you're going to want to subscribe. And then you can follow us on social media on YouTube, X, and Instagram. Until next time, this is State of Hoops podcast co-host Todd Schlekeway, along with my fellow co-host Nate Malchow. Have a good one.